The Brew House was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. I'm Bill Pucko. It's a pleasure to be joined by Dave Yates, the host of the Fidelis College Sports Beat, with Dave Yates, oddly enough.
Oddly enough, yes. It works out well, doesn't it?
Pat Duffy from the Breakroom.
Hey, everybody.
And Mike Catalana, our co-hosting here.
Good
the only
to be
guy
back.
still with a Wikipedia page among the panelists. Hey, look, every 3 weeks or so, it seems like we wind up into a discussion about the unwritten rules of baseball. And they came up big time this week with the punch heard around the game. What do you make of the whole setup here?
I mean, if you look at it, there were some unwritten rules, obviously, but there were some blatant rule violations, too. I mean, that slide was, and frankly, I thought the suspension, I thought it was inequitable. I think Batista should have got more than what he got, because I really do. I think if he hadn't landed that punch, would he have gotten as many? I mean, it was, to me, it was the reaction was appropriate. The fact that he landed the punch made it look even worse.
All right, but you're forgetting everything leading up to that point. I mean, Batista gets beaned in the last game of that's the last time they're playing each other this season, right? There's no other chance to retaliate for something that happened months ago. All right, so you bean him. Of course he's coming in spikes up if he gets an opportunity second. I think that everything that happened on Texas's side was the wrong way to do it. Batista was just answering for what happened. I don't blame him for the bat flip. It made those playoffs exciting all those months ago. And that punch, I mean, I boxed, right? I play hockey. I've never seen a cleaner punch landed ever than that punch at second base between Toronto and Texas. Texas was in the wrong here.
And he stayed up.
That was impressive.
The best line, though, was the announcer said something to the effect of, he's 2 for 5 now.
But it should have ended after Batista got hit by the pitch. He flipped the bat. I loved it. Okay, it's baseball. They're going to hit him. They hit him. Stop with the spikes in that case. I think that was the step too far. That extended it. And you're right. It ended up being a bigger deal because he connected. I've never seen anybody connect like that in a baseball fight.
If they would have hit him first game of the series, so there's retaliation, there's no need for the spikes because you would have been able to find someone to get him back again. But the fact that they waited so long necessitates the spikes up into second base. And by the way, O'Dare, however you that. You go back and watch some of his highlights playing in the minors and early. He's not the cleanest guy on the planet either. It's not like he's a super victim. So I don't want to hear all this crying for, well, what about his shins? What about his knees? What about his legs?
At the genesis of it, though, Dave, I don't see where Texas had a problem with what Batista did in the playoffs.
I don't either. It's one of those things, if your guy does it, you love it. It's when the other guy does it, you hate it. It's one of those, where does the line stop for showboating when it becomes so bad that you have to retaliate for it? Everybody does it. I'm a Red Sox fan. Poppy does it all the time. If I'm not a Red Sox fan, what he does when he hits a home run would tick me off. Yeah. But I love it. So it's just that's part of the game, I think.
I was so annoyed by the whole setup. I was thinking, if I was a third party, if I'm the Red Sox, I throw at the Texas guys for what happened down there.
So the enemy of my enemy?
Yeah,
is
that
something
kind of
like
thing.
That? Yeah, there is a lot of silly rules. But we've had pitchers, major leaguers, guys that have been in, talk about it. They know it. It's not going to end. I don't think it's going to end anytime. They like to do their own little policing. In hockey, it usually gets policed and then it ends. The difference in baseball is you never know who somebody's going to throw at, especially if there's a pitcher involved. It's an American League team. They don't get an opportunity and whatever it is. In hockey, usually it's taken care of by the guys who actually did it.
Without elaborating, and you know hockey better than any of us here, is there a subject matter? Are there unwritten rules of hockey that we can discuss someday?
I mean, I don't think there's any. I mean, yeah, sure, there's tiny, itty-bitty little things, but I think everything's pretty straightforward and on the surface, right? I mean,
well, everybody knows. Fighters, you fight against another fighter. Mm-hmm. You also don't fight a guy who's injured, and that's one they get really upset about. It's kind of that code they know. Where it's like, why are you going after me? I saw it with Patrick Coletta this year in an Amherst game. A guy started to go after him, and he's
pointing his hand. I was at that game. Yeah.
He's going, "Are you really going to fight me? I got a busted hand." So that's kind of known that way a little bit, and at a certain point.
Did he fight him?
No, he
Well,
kind of.
no, Patty took 2 punches, holding his hand up, looking at the referee, like, "What do you want me to do?"
Yeah, and the guy should have known. And I've heard stories, and I know we're running late here, but from in the box where a guy will apologize to the other guy. I've had the guys who work in the bench say, I'm hearing the one guy say, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were hurt," because that's a code amongst fighters.
There's a story that goes around too, where like the 3 words that the hockey players least like to hear from a referee is "let him go."
Yeah.
This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brew House. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills next. The Hillside family of agencies works with youth and families on their own terms, helping them pursue their own goals, whether at home, work, school, or one of the Hillside campuses, offering encouragement and commitment, standing with families, helping to create a healthy future. The Buffalo Bills Quote of the Week was brought to you by the Rochester Geico Office. Give the Rochester Geico team a chance to see how much you could save on all your insurance needs. Call or stop by the office on West Henrietta Road, open Monday through Saturday. The Geico Rochester Quote of the Week, this is Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, I understand, because this is what happens. Players start reading stuff, and they say they don't, but they start reading stuff, and I'm sure there's people saying, oh, who knows how Sammy got hurt, or what did he do? But look, he is injured. The team confirmed he had to have this. I think he'll be back. I think he'll be fine, but he has probably read things that said he got hurt doing this, or he was messing around, or he wasn't rehabbing properly, or whatever it is. So they say things like, don't believe everything you hear. That part, I agree, because people throw a lot of nonsense out there. The truth is, he was injured. He has had it fixed. They are going to be careful with him this year. I'd be worried if I'm a fan sitting there because he's such an important part of the team. So I think Sammy will be okay, but I think they're going to be really cautious with him.
This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House, and this portion brought to you by the Hillside family of agencies. Pat, did the Bills blow the Shaq Lawson pick?
I don't like saying it, but yeah, they blew the Shaq Lawson pick. This is not a Willis McGahee situation where you have Travis Henry coming off a 1,000-yard season and we can shelve Willis because he's such a phenomenal talent. You needed Shaq Lawson healthy this year. You not only you drafted for need, and it just so happened that the best defensive end fell in that need. Well, now he's not there. There were other needs to fill.
And they were deep in that position, too.
I mean,
the draft was.
Yes, exactly. So this kid's going to miss 4 to 5 games, which, that's a vet. That's not a big deal, but he needs to be up to speed on what happens. He also has to adjust to the speed of this game. And, now you have to go find someone to play defensive end, whether it's Dwight Freeney, whether it's, I'm gritting my teeth saying it, Greg Hardy, who I don't want to see in Buffalo. It's a huge mess because your medical guys were wrong.
I 100% agree with you.
What is happening?
Yeah, I know. Something is wrong. But no, it really is the case. And let's face it, if he hurts his knee, you go, that happens. I mean, who would have known? No, it was a shoulder. That was the topic. It's part of the reason why he dropped. And then he aggravates it, injures it to the point of surgery in a non-contact thing, which tells you that it was a tenuous situation to begin with. And you're right, they need him. They said day one he's fine. They said day one he is the starter. So they were counting on him there. And to your point, it's easy to say, oh, he'll be back at the important part of the year. No reps, no training camp, no preseason. He's never played NFL football. It's hard enough for a veteran, let alone for a young guy. And this is what you have when you have a team that is not thinking long-term. They are thinking short-term, and I understand why, but when you're thinking short-term, you draft for that. They blew it in this case because this guy's effectiveness is going to be limited. I hope he comes back. I hope he comes back great, but you have to worry about it.
Do you see them on draft day, like going out of their way to overlook it, saying, we want this guy so bad we're going to pretend the problem doesn't exist?
I think so, because it was the type of guy that on, that aside, looked like a no-brainer pick. I mean, he looked like the type of guy that could fill a need, and a team with so many needs to fill one like that. I mean, it looked like something that would appease a lot of people, but I mean, to miss it like that is just
and the way they spun it too when they announced it, it was like they made it seem like this was a good thing.
Well, and I will say, in the long term, look, he has the surgery, which they were expecting at the end of the year, comes back fine. Are we buying green bananas here in Buffalo? Are we not thinking Could be short term for everybody. You better believe Rex and Whaley and everybody were expecting him to contribute right away.
Well, because they need them to possibly keep their jobs.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, it's possible Rex Ryan doesn't get a snap ever as a head coach from this guy who he drafted to be the cornerstone of his defense.
Which is why for 16 years the team has never been on solid enough footing to look at the big picture.
I always worry about that when you're in this position where they can't start over. They didn't want to just go ground zero and go find the guy. They're trying to cobble it together, keep it together, make the playoffs, end the streak, and then go forward. And that's when you make decisions. Doesn't mean Shaq Lawson won't eventually be a great player and could play for many years. But to Rex and Doug Whaley and all, they need him right now.
This portion of the original Rochester Press Box brought to you by the Hillside family of agencies. Like it or not, next. As we go to break, it is time for the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Is called Turnbull at 343-2005. As we come back from the break, time for the answer to the Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning Trivia Question of the Week. When you're searching for a local heating and air conditioning contractor, look no further than one of the most reliable teams in the area at Turnbull Heating and Air Conditioning. Just call 343-2005. See New York in a whole new way. Amtrak is offering a 15% discount for all travel inside New York State and Montreal. Visit Amtrak.com for the See New York discount. Safe, comfortable, affordable, and easy. Amtrak. Enjoy the journey. Welcome back to the original Rochester Press Box. This portion brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Pat, like it or not, the reception Aroldis Chapman got upon his return to the Yankees.
Well, this is always difficult for me because, what he did or is accused of doing or whatever is awful. But when he comes back, he represents wins for a franchise, right? And those fans are excited to have him back. I mean, you see it in every sport. We just talked about Greg Hardy a second ago. Let's say the Shaq Lawson thing doesn't work out, and they're going to Bills go sign Greg Hardy because he's the best available defensive end. There will be fans in Buffalo that will cheer for Greg Hardy. And up front, I'm going to be a guy that doesn't want Greg Hardy on my team. But if the season moves along and he stays a good guy and he's playing well, I'd be lying if I wouldn't say I'm confident that I wouldn't be cheering for him. Does that make sense what I just said?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it's really hard to blur the line between real life and what's happening on the field. It was so much easier when we didn't know what these guys were doing. And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but what am I supposed to do? Just not cheer for a guy?
Well, it's a tug-of-war, I think, between human nature and political correctness to a certain degree.
It is, and I mean, like you said, it's covers every sport. You look at Hope Solo. I mean, the trouble she's been in women's, and she has never, I've never heard her booed or anything for any of the stuff that she's gone through.
I agree with him again. No, it really is, because I do think there's a part of you that just says, he's on my team and he's playing. Now, I will say there's a difference between accepting this guy, go, all right, he's on the team, let's see what he does and whatever, and giving him a standing ovation and being so excited for him to be on your team like day one, where you could kind of go, okay, let's just see. I mean, let's be honest. He's the closer for a bad baseball team now. Are you really getting that worked up like he's going to make that big of a difference for a bad team at the moment? But that part, I'm like, okay, all right, Chapman won the game, great. And you'd rather it be somebody else. But it was a pretty warm reception for a guy. Big deal. He's a Aroldis
Well, I'd
Chapman.
love to hang the Yankees for this thing. I think it would have happened anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Oh,
I agree.
David, like it or not, Malachi Richardson, one and done over at Syracuse.
Good for him. Yeah, I mean, you can't with it nowadays. You can't begrudge someone like that from taking a chance. I mean, looking at being a first-round pick in the NBA. I mean, he's got the world in his hands right now.
Yeah, I talked to Jim Boeheim when he was in town at Monroe, and I asked that question about it, and he went into the whole thing about no one knows how they're moving up and down, and I don't know if this kid is ready. Look, he's going to go in the first round. If he goes in the first round, it's guaranteed money, and this guy's a talent, and I don't think he's the kind of guy, talent-wise, that next year he'd be in the top 5 or the top 10. If he goes in the first round, gets in a good situation, good for him. And I think he's actually been really moving up the charts.
Mike, like it or not, the Sixers won the draft lottery.
Finally. You know, I will say one thing about the Sixers. Sam Hinkie, general manager, got fired. You know, people thought the whole process thing. In the end, he got fired because he couldn't deal with the next portion of it. But they did some similar things to the Sabres. And aren't the Sabres happy they got their guy? And they've got a couple of guys, and maybe they're going to get more. When it's all said and done, the Sixers haven't had these guys on the court, but they come into this year with the number 1 pick. They hope Embiid is healthy. Dario Saric is a guy they drafted. All these guys are going to be there. The general manager is out, but things have started to turn for them that way. It was an ugly process to go through, but I do want to make one other point.
The ugliest.
Yeah, except this. It was the first time they had the worst record in the NBA since 1975. So tell people that sometimes. They think they were the worst team every year. First time since 1975, and it's the first time they've had the number 1 pick in 20 years. So people act like they're the Edmonton Oilers, who somehow have gotten the number 1 pick all the time. They haven't been. They've been picking third. They haven't had. Minnesota had a worse record than them twice. They've been awful for the last 3 years. But you don't rush to mediocrity. You try to build a team, and they hope that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no, Rod Baker has sat in that seat one day in one of our original shows, still part of that organization. This portion of the original Rochester Press Box brought to you by Amtrak Trains. Enjoy the journey. Unfinished business is next. The Rochester Press Box Stat of the Week, brought to you by Cariglio's Pizza, with 5 locations serving the Rochester area. Visit carigliospizza.com today.
Launching May 16th, 100.9 FM, WXIR.
Extreme Independent Radio, Rochester, New York.
Make your day supreme with a new Bacon Supreme Omelet Breakfast Sandwich, loaded with peppers, onions, potatoes, and topped with 2 slices of cherry wood smoked bacon and cheese, all in a freshly baked croissant. America runs on Dunkin'. Welcome back. This is the original Rochester Press Box presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. It's unfinished business. Back.
Mike was just talking about his beloved 76ers. Here, I have a question for you. What is the class action lawsuit going to be? The payout the NBA has to unleash after it's finally proven that the NBA draft lottery is rigged. Because I think the proof happened this week with Dikembe Mutombo in his tweet. You remember Dikembe Mutombo, right? He played in Philly with Allen Iverson, and he tweeted out 8 hours before we were supposed to know that the 76ers had the first overall pick. And it's just amazing how every single year there's some amazing emotional or logical reason why the team that is picking first overall. Like, for example, if I were to build a case for the 76ers this year, it would be Sam Hinkie, general manager, who the NBA wanted blown the heck out of Philadelphia, lost his job. And on top of that, the Philadelphia 76ers bit the bullet and were the first team to allow advertising on their jerseys, which was a huge, thing that people were pushing back against. We know it's rigged. It's WWE style. The question is, how bad is the fallout going to be when it's proven that the NBA has controlled this whole thing?
I have to call time out. First of all, that system is so screwy. Minnesota got the pick before. You're talking about between 1 and 2. They were up against the Lakers and the Celtics, 2 iconic franchises. If you're going to rig that thing, number 1 pick would have gone to the Lakers, not to the Sixers. And you watch the way the process is, the way they actually do the picks. That's an awful difficult process to go through all of that. It's not like just picking an envelope. Believe me, I don't really think it's rigged. It's the first time they've gotten the number 1 pick. And there's 2 guys at the top, and neither one of them is LeBron James. So no, it's not. I hate to break it to you, but no, it's not rigged. And I don't think a little stub, when every team is going to have a little logo on their jerseys in the next year anyhow.
They got pretty defensive on that.
They got to him, didn't they?
Conspiracy.
Yeah. And by the way, seriously, Dikembe Mutombo was the guy.
How does he know? All of a sudden, just Dikembe knows all of a sudden.
Because he saw that they were the number 1 team.
He's played basketball for 30 years. He knows how this works.
Dave, get us out
You
of
really
this.
think he knows how it works? Dikembe.
Don't change the channel. I want to talk about soccer for a second. They actually do something right in that sport. In England, they have Championship Sunday, where every game on the final day of the season is played at the same time. So the teams aren't playing later to know the results. Could you imagine if the NFL did that? If the last day of the NFL season, everybody played at, say, 4 o'clock, so that you didn't know if your game meant, you're not going into your game thinking, well, my game means nothing. I have to play for everything, whether it's a draft pick or whether it's a playoff spot. The games would mean everything. I think it's something the NFL should look into.
It's something. It was not always that way, right? They used to stagger them all over the place.
Yeah. So I think it's brilliant. The last few years since I've really been watching British soccer, which I admit to, I'm like, this is a great idea. Why doesn't the NFL adopt this?
Very good.
I mentioned that Jim Boeheim was in town this week. He wasn't alone. He brought Dino Babers with him, who's the new football coach, and that guy has his work cut out for him. I remember it wasn't that long ago that as great as Syracuse basketball has been and as winning as they've been and the way they fill the dome up, football used to do the same thing. Football used to be a real thing at the Carrier Dome. They've lost that. Rarely does anybody talk to me about Syracuse football and what they have going. It's going to be tough for them. They're in the ACC. This guy, though, is the right kind of guy, I think, to coach this team. He's got smarts. He's got passion. I think he can recruit. He can bring in good players. Are they ever going to go back to the days when they were challenging for a national championship? That may be a few years away. But they're going to fix up the dome a little bit. I think they're going to play a more exciting brand of football. It would be tough to make it less exciting than it's been the last few years. And this Dino Babers is a guy, I think, that has the right mindset and the right passion to do it. I wish him luck. He's going to need it. But maybe the Dome will actually be a football place as well as basketball in the future.
This portion of the original Rochester Press Box presented by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thanks very much, Dave. Good to have you in.
Always a pleasure, Bill.
See you again next week on the original Rochester Press Box.